Welcome back. In our last episode, we talked about cacio e pepe, the cheese and pepper sauce that makes up one of the 4 foundational pastas of Rome. So what happens when you add pork to that? Well, you get pasta alla Gricia. So let's learn about that today on Bob Appétit. So, nearly 1600 years ago, in the region around Rome, Lazio, one of the earliest pastas of Rome was being made. Pasta alla Gricia. This pasta is similar to the one we made last time. It uses Pecorino Romano, strong peppercorns, and one other key ingredient, pork fat. The history of pasta alla Gricia is an interesting one. There's some debate as to where it comes from. The first option is that it comes from the namesake of the bakers that came from Switzerland and Germany, known as the Grigioni. These bakers were said to have stayed inside of the bakeries, living, sleeping, eating, all while working. And it's thought that they were the ones who helped perfect the air aging method that is used on the guanciale in the dish. So because of them, we get alla Gricia from the Grigioni. But there's another option. That option is that it comes from the city of Griciano. Now, this follows a common naming pattern in Italian cuisine, especially in the 4 pastas of Rome, which is pasta alla Amatriciana. Amatriciana gets its name from another city in Rome, Amatrice. Amatrice and Griciano are not that far away, both existing inside of Lazio. And it makes sense, because the nickname for this dish is the white Amatriciana, because it doesn't have the tomatoes of the Amatriciana dish. So similarly, I think and agree with the opinion that it gets its name for its proximity to the city where it originated, Griciano. What are your opinions? Leave them down below in the comments. We talked in the last video about how we can use the shepherds of Rome to help guide us in what they could have eaten, especially while they were traveling. We know that the shepherds had on them cheese, cacio, and peppercorns, pepe, but they had another common ingredient while they went out, cured pork. The most common type of cured pork they would have had is guanciale, which comes from the jowls, the upper neck and cheek of the pig. However, for a lot of you, you've probably seen that you can't find guanciale easily. And this is because for over 50 years, the United States has had a ban on importing this meat from Europe. A lot of American and Canadian pig farmers are now starting to get into the art of sending this across the border for us to use. But it is only now really starting to pick back up. So people have decided to use pancetta instead. Well, what's the difference between the two? Well, first, upon looking at them both, you can immediately tell that the guanciale has quite a bit more fat in it than the pancetta does. This is important because the key ingredient in this dish is not so much the meat as it is the fat. That is what helps build the emulsification, the sauce that we're looking for. So by having one or the other, you have to kind of change your recipe because you're going to get less fat out of the pancetta. But let's also talk about how they're made. The pancetta is made by simple salt curing, and it can be aged for anywhere from 20 days to 4 months. A lot of herbs can be added to it, and depending on where the pancetta is made, the herbs can range region to region. Guanciale is also cured, but it is aged for at minimum 3 months, sometimes even longer. This dry aging process gives guanciale a concentrated, more powerful flavor. And as we learned with cacio e pepe, you need those big, bold flavors to stand up in such a simple dish. Beyond that, there are some regional flavorings that do happen. Commonly, it can include salt and pepper, sometimes sage, but different regions will make their guanciale as they have sort of to the tongue decided which is better. For this dish, we're going to be using guanciale, which I found from a local Italian market. But if you don't have it, if you can't find it, you can go ahead and use the pancetta. Just know that you will probably need a little bit more pancetta to make up for the lacking amount of pork fat.
For this recipe, I use 6 ounces of guanciale. Try to freeze it 15 to 45 minutes ahead of time. This way, that doesn't happen. It becomes a lot easier to cut when it's frozen. 8 ounces of rigatoni. I like to use this instead of spaghetti because of the ridges on the outside, as well as allowing the sauce to get deep on the inside. It just makes for an overall better flavor, I think. 2 1/4 quarts of water, salted, 1 tablespoon of Telecherry peppercorns, and 1.5 ounces of finely grated Pecorino Romano. The trick to not using excess oil in this dish is to add water to the pan and let the fat from the pork render down in its place. Add your guanciale and let it begin to render. Separate all the pieces if you didn't do that beforehand and just let it cook. Don't be afraid to add a little bit more water as necessary. Let the meat continue to cook on a medium-low to medium temperature, tossing every once in a while until it turns a golden brown and the fat has completely rendered, about 9 minutes. From there, separate the pork from the liquid, preferably with a slotted spoon, and let it sit on a plate. Do not try and eat the delicious, salty morsels. They're hot. Add your pepper to the hot oil and bloom for 1 minute. Bloom just means to let it cook until you can smell it, at which point turn off your heat. Now add your pasta to the pasta water and cook until it is halfway done. For these rigatoni, it is about 5 minutes. Now turn your pan back onto high and spoon over 1.5 cups of pasta water. After a minute, bring over your pasta and let it cook for the remainder of time in the pepper and fat. Add water as necessary, but only 1/4 cup at a time to avoid overwatering. A minute before your pasta is al dente, return the guanciale, or pork, to your pan. Now turn off your heat and wait 30 seconds. Don't touch anything. Just wait. We need the pasta to cool slightly or the cheese will clump. After you've waited, add half of your pecorino cheese to the pasta and toss, stir, and move around vigorously. Remember, we're trying to emulsify the cheese here like we did in our previous video. If you see your cheese is clumping, add a little bit more water to loosen it up. Once it is all mixed in, add the remaining cheese and work the next minute or 2 to emulsify it by stirring and tossing the pasta around. In the end, you'll have a creamy, rich, peppery white sauce that'll make you forget to add more cheese and pepper as desired, like it said in your notes.
Today we made pasta alla Gricia, which took what we learned last time with cacio e pepe, the cheese and the peppercorns, and added in the guanciale, the pork fat, to make a white sauce, a creamy, umami, salty, peppery, flavored sauce that sticks to the insides and the outsides of a rigatoni. This looks superb and I'm excited to taste it. The umami blast from the guanciale is phenomenal. It stands up with the powerful and bold flavors of the telecherries and the tang and zeal of the Pecorino Romano. Honestly, I can understand how this is one of the 4 key pastas of Rome because it is phenomenal. And one of the original dishes from 400 AD. This has stood the test of time for a reason. Honestly, I am super excited to continue on my journey to try the next 2 pastas of Rome, carbonara and amatriciana, and I'm really hoping you'll come learn with me as we try those out. Thanks a lot for coming to Bob Appétit. Hey, you wanna try?
Yeah.
Yeah, come try. Come try. Ah. Get a bite. Ah. It's good, isn't it? It's, yes, the thumb of a poo. All right, this is mine now.